so much of the enjoyment of having, the blazer and being on the journey of obviously modifying it. I think everyone growing up as well, I definitely even, having the chance to wrench on your own truck and, doing that is so rewarding.
Yo, yo, what up, C10 Nation? This is Ronnie from C10 Talk. C10 Talk is one of those podcast things. We talk C10 trucks, tech, and people. That's right, people. Because it's the people that make the scene so rad-ass. The trucks are cool, but the people are cooler. You can check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, C10Talk.com, and anywhere else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thanks for checking out our latest video and being part of the C10 Nation. All right. How about a little brother from another mother down under, Oscar Melchiorsen? You might know him as 74K5 _ Chief B, and the myth, the right-hand drive 74K5. Oscar, this is going to be a good one, brother. I appreciate you taking time to be on the pod, and look forward to learning about everything that goes on down there.
Absolute pleasure to be here today, Ronnie. So apart from, definitely being on the other side of the Pacific pond, we're not upside down. So good start. We'll debunk that myth. Absolute pleasure to be here, Ronnie. So super excited for this, and let's have a chat about what's going on in Australia.
So let me figure this out. I think we talked a little bit about it, but are we a full 12 hours behind you, or are you guys, where are we at right now?
So it's always interesting in the way that I like to think about it. We're a day ahead, but we're about 6-7 hours behind that day ahead. So afternoon for the west coast of the US, it's the morning for us. So I got a cup of coffee. I don't know if you got a beer yet, Ronnie, but that's definitely an Aussie thing to do. As soon as it hits 12 o'clock, we get a cold one and let's have a wrap session.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. So we're a day ahead, but 6 hours behind in the day. So that's pretty cool. So it's the morning of, I guess, Friday morning there, and it's Thursday here. So yeah, Thursday midday here. And so you guys could tell the future. That's what we love about Australia, because we get to, when your New Year's Eve, or I guess you're just New Year's hits, we're, again, I guess it's probably about 2 o'clock our time, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, what's the future look like? Are we going to make it another day? You never know in the world we live in today.
It's looking good. I think,
Yeah.
there's still plenty of trucks that are out there that are, waiting to have good things happen to them. And mate, sun is shining. So let's keep it going.
So you've got a pretty amazing fleet. I don't know what all you have currently in the fleet. Obviously we're going to talk about the Blazer, the mythic Loch Ness, not what is it? Loch Ness Ness? What is that damn animal? It's in, yeah, Loch Ness Monster. Yeah. So that needs to be the name of this thing, because it's pretty crazy. The first time I ever saw it, you just don't see a lot of right-hand drive squares. At least up here we don't. So but at one point you had a 72 C20 little dually that was really spectacular. Do you still have that?
I don't have it anymore, sadly. I think with all things getting built, I really wanted to focus my time on the Blazer. It's not easy restoring these trucks. I think, definitely factoring in that a $200 part from the States becomes a $600 part in Australia when you factor in the shipping. We're buying the dollar at about 60 cents. So it's really an expensive and quite an elongated process. Getting parts over and restoring two trucks at once is something that I had the appetite for, but the bank account did not agree with,
Well,
as we all go through.
that truck was spectacular. Your 72 dually. Is that a truck that you found down there? Was it converted? I don't ever remember seeing that it was.
Yeah, so it was still left hand, and it was an interesting truck. So during COVID, when the world was losing its mind and people weren't allowed to leave their house, I came across it on, we have a Gumtree, which is probably mixed between maybe OfferUp and Craigslist. So it's hit and miss. There's things that do exist, but equally there's stuff where it looks good in photos and It's questionable when you see it in person. So I came across that in Australia. We weren't allowed to, go 3 miles outside where we were living essentially during the lockdown. So this truck was about 50 miles away. I had a really good purpose to go check it out, but I pretty much transferred money first. Drove the truck home because I had to leave the area. So you needed a good excuse to get out of town. That was a great excuse. I drove it back home. And it was absolutely killer. I had paperwork back to 72. Originally, it was a Wisconsin truck, so saw some snow, saw some salt. We're showing that still in the original paperwork, but originally like a camper special that was converted by a company in Utah called Dad Duallys back in the 80s. I'm not sure if they exist anymore, but they did a really, really cool job, obviously, converting this C20 long bed to a Dually. So
Yeah, yeah, it was a stunner, and I'm glad it made its way down there, and you found it for just a little bit. I will say that it's easy just to jump into trucks because that's what we love and that's why we're here. So we're going to get to know Oscar a little bit more. What makes him tick, how he got into these things. But do you see more 67 to 72s? Because when you're in the cab and you look at them, and even first gens 60 to 66, they're 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 definitely set up. When you think about the generations of C10s, first gen, we just talked a little bit about Rachel Derbs. She's got her panel. Your first gen 60 to 66. It's funny how the left and right. It's almost like they're set up for that, and then a 67 to 72 second gen C10 is just absolutely set up. I mean, you could take everything and move it right on over. Dash pad doesn't matter. And then you get into the first gen squares and second gen squares, a little bit more going on there. So do you see a lot of the first and second gens that have been converted down there more so obviously than the Loch Ness monster?
yeah, so it's really interesting with how Australia ticks in terms of the classic, Ford, Chevs, any classic trucks. Is that we have some rules that anything that's bought in that's less than 25 years old, it has to be converted to a right hand drive to be able to register it in Australia, and you kind of rewind the clock back to the 60s and the 70s when some of these trucks were bought in pre having a 3D printer or pre having a computer where you could kind of CAD up how it's going to look. There were shops there that were essentially, cutting dashes, refiberglassing to convert everything. There's been some really, really good jobs where you see, obviously, in person, the hours and hours and hours of work that's gone into converting them. But there's also equally, I've heard some stories, I haven't seen it yet in person, of left to right hand drive converted 60s and early 70s trucks that all the steering components are still on the left hand side, and there's a chain that essentially runs to your steering shaft on the right hand side. And it's a lot of faith to put in stuff that's probably been there for, survived 30, 40, 50 years. And yeah, just hats off to obviously everyone that's done it in the past, because there's the trucks over in Australia that weren't always the most popular, but there's a huge resurgence of these old 60s and 70s bow ties getting restored back to their former glory.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to hear, that they are still making their way over there and people are converting them and making their way over. So it's awesome. Okay, so how did you get so bitten by this? I mean, obviously for us, I assume it's a little different, but for you over there, you're an anomaly, right? Somebody who's willing to put up that kind of money when you say a part that might be 200 in the States, 600 over there, plus you're dealing with a conversion rate of 60 cents on the dollar. So it just gets a little bit, I'm sure, daunting. And we could talk a little bit about that. But how'd you become such a Chevy nut?
Oh, mate, it's a ripper question, and we could probably sit here all day and talk about it. But yeah, if we go back probably to young Oscar, I didn't really have anyone in my family that were car nuts. I grew up, obviously, my folks had old Range Rovers, so a bit different. The Chevs were never really part of the equation, but these old four-wheel drive Range Rovers that we had, the 80s and 90s shapes, heavy doors, wind up windows, no AC. And all my fondest memories of going to the beach, going out into the bush. There's not a heap else to do on this island, sadly. If you're not out in the water worrying about the sharks or out in the bush worrying about the snakes, you really got to get amongst it. But I remember getting in friends' cars and slamming new car doors because that's how you'd close the old car door. And people going, what the heck is this guy doing? Come on, geez, this is my brand new
Yeah.
Holden
How
Commodore.
strong do you have to be, Oscar, for Christ's sake? You're like, I'm used to the Range Rover.
Yeah, exactly. So just growing up with older cars, I was always bitten by wanting something that's all metal. It's got some character to it. I think if these trucks could talk, it would just be what they all have so much soul. So kind of fast forwarding past all the childhood stuff, I was working for Verizon in Australia. So spending my time there. And I spent some time in the States in 2019 in San Diego. Absolute awesome place. Massive fan of all of America, but the West Coast definitely has my heart. Um, and I went to a couple of the Cars and Coffees over there. So you've got a few in San Diego. I spent some time in Santa Barbara where I'd have, a couple nights partying and go get a coffee in the morning and, kind of stumble across these Cars and Coffee. And where you see, cars from, or you see your 300 SL gull wings and you see old Ferraris and Lamborghinis. I was the guy that was sitting there gawking at the Chevy trucks, especially the 4x4s, where people would kind of probably look at me and go, what the heck is this guy doing? There's a, $4 million Mercedes here. And you're looking at this kind of old, K series it's a bit faded, but I just knew at that moment, every time I went over there, that was what I had to have. They just have such a, regardless of whether they're two wheel or four wheel, just the presence they have when you kind of see them in person. It always took my breath away. So I was set on it.
Do you think that or I guess, did you have any type of affliction or a passion prior to coming over in 19 and seeing these K series trucks and Blazers? And did you already kind of have through social media, did you already have a little taste of it?
Yeah, so there wasn't a heap of exposure to it. I definitely went through, as everyone does. I was always an absolute car nut. You couldn't pull me away from anything. I think it was just a point in time of trying to find out where my passion truly lied. I definitely was pursuing at the time. I had one of the locally manufactured Ford Falcons, which have the legendary Barra in them, which are the modern, 2JZs essentially. And I was chasing a very big figure on a piece of paper to say, hey, cool, I can scare the crap out of myself every time I put my foot down. Did it make me truly happy? Yeah, it did. But chasing the power, and you can go on forever. It just doesn't end. I wanted something that more of a cruiser, something you could just kind of get in, drive to the beach and enjoy. And the answer, just what more than the beach cruisers than your K series or your Blazers. But the problem is they're unheard of over in Australia. So they were never locally manufactured. Holden bought some C trucks and K trucks over in very limited quantities, which there's a pretty cool story with a Blazer that we'll definitely touch on around that. But you'd post on some of the local pages looking for some of these C and K series trucks, and you'd pretty much get laughed at, or you'd get someone that'd say, "Hey, I've got one, but 100 grand might convince me to." Move it on. And geez, I could sell both kidneys, but who knows?
Yeah, I need one. I need one kidney so you can have one. But what are you going to do with three, you son of a bitch? Well, I don't know. I just thought I might sell my truck. Yeah. Is it something where, and the audience, they're going to love this, but I thought I remember a few different guys. I think Luke is one of the guys that I have met years past. I ran into him at SEMA again this year. Why don't more people import more trucks there? Is it just too hard to? Is there still a demand to get these trucks over there? And if so, is it just not worth getting them over there, or is it one of those things where you're like, hey, I can find something, then I don't trust it, and then I get burned, and I'm out X amount of dollars, or walk us through that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it's an intimidating process for sure. You know, the Pacific Ocean, 13-hour flight at the best of times. You've got 7,000 miles of nothingness in between, and you're essentially, purchasing something that you have no idea if it even exists. Stateside, you hear, way too many stories of anyone can upload a photo of a real nice looking truck at a good price, and if it exists or whether or not it's theirs is a whole nother story. So we're really limited in terms of what we can do, obviously, with sourcing trucks stateside. There's definitely if you're looking at anything with our conversion rate, shipping, we're very tax heavy as well. Our government loves stealing the hard earned dollars, but um, if you're going to buy a $15,000 truck, so it's 15,000 sitting in California. Once you factor in transport to Long Beach or San Fran, one of the ports, you factor in shipping, you factor in customs duties. That $15,000 truck becomes a $35,000 truck. So it's a huge, huge, huge investment to
No, hold on.
bring.
Have you shipped it yet? With 35, 15 going to 35, that's you getting a hold of it over there.
That's getting it, transporting it with the
Okay.
shipping as well. So it's pretty much getting it to your door. But
Okay.
where a lot of our issues lie, which
And that's
I
being
think
converted as well?
that's, yeah. So it's converted. So it's about double and a bit normally, factoring in the conversion as well. So it's still a lot of money, obviously, to part with before you've the trucks, obviously it's landed. But a lot of issues that we do run into, which not it doesn't come up a lot, is we have really rigorous asbestos rules and regulations. So everything, obviously, asbestos breaks, gaskets. There's plenty of stories of people that bring over trucks. Customs will happily pull them apart on the basis that they may have asbestos, and you're essentially left with what was a running, rolling truck. Is it has no wheels, it has no brakes, it has dash pulled apart, and they'll happily hand it to you and say, "Hey, look, yeah, cool, we've cleared it of asbestos, but now you've got half a truck and you're still." 35,000 dollars out of pocket. So it's super. It's really intimidating, obviously, having the thought of that happening, especially when you've invested that kind of money and the time in between to be parted with the money. There's plenty of stories of containers just falling off the side of ships, whether or not they have nice trucks in them. That's another story. But man, it's dealing with the unknown, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like if you're investing 15 to 35, that guy at the import export customs needs to be, I don't know, so somebody's got to have some pictures of him and his boyfriend or something. I don't know how this works, but it's like, holy shit, dude. You can't just blow my truck apart because you thought there might be asbestos. I just feel like that would be such a waste of their time. But I'm sure the tails get bigger and bolder, and it's one of those things where you're like, hey, I could spend all that money. I guess at the end of the day, if you got a $15,000 truck and you're gonna say I'm gonna commit to 35 to get it there, convert it. What does a truck like that? What is it worth? So is it worth 35? Is it worth 80 if it finally makes it through and you got it and it's a runner and it's everything you wanted it to be? Is it worth the juice, right?
Yeah, and it a couple of years ago, if you asked me that question, I'd say probably not. But I think thanks to social media, obviously, a lot of Netflix, the new series that are coming out, there's always some cool old truck that some badass dude drives, or some badass chicks that are driving them around. I think thanks to that, the resurgence and the want for these trucks is on the increase immensely in Australia, and it's still an untapped resource. That $35,000 truck, if you're willing to take the risk on it, that would probably be a $50,000 truck over here. So there's always going to be supply and demand, but Australia, as of recently bringing in the Rams and the Silverados, a lot more people are seeing these trucks driving around, where previously there were little Land Cruisers and Nissan Patrols and all of these other Japanese four-wheel drives, and you park them next to a 2500 Silverado, and they look like toy cars, and people go, I want the big truck next. So it's refreshing, man. It's really, really cool to see that. I'd put driving an old truck almost the equivalent of driving a Ferrari around the streets of Australia. You cannot go to a gas station, you cannot go to shops, you can't drive it without someone going, oh my goodness, like what is this thing? And this is so cool, and wanting to know all about it. So it's really, really refreshing that's the times we're living in now with these old trucks.
Is it better if a guy was to do that? Is it better to have it converted here, or is it better to have it converted there?
Yeah, I'd probably say converted here so you can probably pretty closely monitor. Like a lot of the shops that are doing it, they eat and breathe some converting some of them. The new stuff definitely, there's certain GM are actually converting the Silverados over here now, so it's really refreshing that GM's doing that. Sadly, with the closure of Holden a few years ago, they're not locally manufacturing cars anymore. So for them to be doing that, I hope that there's going to be a time where there are variants of the Silverados that are manufactured over here where they can actually, their started life right-hand drive, and they're not converted. But in the interim, like even a lot of the older trucks as well, the shops that were converting them, the hours they spent doing it, it's really, really incredible. Like my Blazer, AC, power steering, it's still got everything that it came with from the factory, and they spent the time obviously making that all work. So hats off to them, man.
Yeah, it's super cool and so unique. Again, I remember the first time I saw it, and I'm thinking, this is like super flipped photography. There's no way, right? And then kind of dive in, and I'm sure I reposted it on the Nation or something, and it gets, just astronomical views. The funny thing is because your Blazer's so unique, um, anytime you post it, it gets rave reviews, and it's one of those things because it's a special. If it was left-hand drive, it would be special, and then to actually see that it's right-hand conversion, it's even, it's more unique. I guess walk us through that. How did you come across this? Just again, Loch Ness monster, something that a lot of people don't even believe is real, and I can't even imagine somebody in Sydney or in Australia. So for the audience, he's from Sydney or he lives in Sydney. Because if I saw it here, I would shit my pants, and I see Blazers every day. So it's not even something that I can't imagine over there where you could do a GoFundMe and people would just send you money to drive it around because they just want to see it. It's like going to the three ring circus.
Hey, that's a pretty good idea, James.
Yeah, $5 is $5, dude. It's like I don't know what it costs for a gallon of gas in Sydney, Australia, but I mean, hey, if we can help fund the Oscar K5,
Yeah.
revolt,
Nah.
like let's do it.
Yeah, no, it's man, it's I can't get the smile off my face. Every time I drive it. So definitely the story with it going back a bit in terms of 2019, seeing these trucks in person. I was always a massive fan of anything old, and the Chevs always had a special place in my heart. I was plopped in front of the TV, watched Jaws. I always knew they existed. Like the reason behind the name is kind of Jaws gave me the inspiration of that's what I got to have. Chief Brody, the swagger he has in that movie is just next level, man. Like to a T. But when I got back home, and there was all this talks of the end of the world at the start of 2020 with this new emerging virus. I was on Gumtree, I was on Facebook Marketplace, I was on all the pages saying, I'm looking for. There were two requirements. It was four-wheel drive, it was Chevy, and it was actually originally left-hand drive. And I thought left-hand drive, it's like driving a right-hand drive truck or car over in the States. You pull up to a set of lights and someone kind of looks at you and goes, dude, what the heck? You're on the wrong side there, buddy. Like what's going on? It just has that cool factor. But I spent some time with a good friend that's got an F100 over here that's still left-hand drive, and I kind of asked him. I said, "What's it like in the day of the life of driving a left-hand drive car or truck in Australia?" And He said it's cool, but it wears off. When you want to go to McDonald's to go get your nuggets, you gotta, when you're going through the drive-through, you gotta jump in the other seat. I actually thought about it for a while and thought maybe I could play, McDonald's roulette where I just pull into the pickup window and whoever's ordered something a bit further before, you just take whatever they've got and say, oh, thank you. But I didn't want to be known as the drive-through bandit or anything like that because it wouldn't last very long. So logistically, left-hand drive, it's cool, but it's hard to negotiate around the streets of Australia, day to day. So spending that time looking, it was a good few months where there was nothing. There were lots of people saying, "Good luck," you know. Anything four-wheel drive's hard enough to find in Australia, let alone an old Chev. And I woke up one day, it was a Thursday morning on my way to work, and posted on Gumtree 10 hours prior was this blue right-hand drive 74, dusty old photos, it was in a shed, horrible lighting. I sent the guy a message because I almost fell off the seat on the train. I thought, people are going to be jumping onto this thing straight away when they see it go up. It was pretty reasonable price. Didn't get anything back for a few hours. And at about lunchtime, when I almost started forgetting about it, the guy calls me back and says, "Hey, yep, this thing's available. I've got a couple of people interested in it. Just one thing that adds a bit of complication is I'm actually going away on holidays for a couple of weeks on Saturday. So if you're interested, you either pick it up now or you got to wait a couple of weeks." And I think all of us, when you get that excitement in your stomach where you just go, "This is something I have to have." There's no time is of the essence. We got to act on this now. So the issue was it was in Melbourne, so another state. We've got about 600 miles in between us. I can't just get in the car and drive down there. So I'm ringing people around like crazy, trying to find anyone that might be in the area to go check out this truck and at least verify it's real. And out of all people, I had a really good friend in Sydney that goes down and sets up some of the dealerships with some of their computer systems, and he just so happens to be in Melbourne. And I shoot him a text and ask if he's close to this suburb that the truck's in, and he pretty much sent me a reply back straight away saying, "Mate, I'm 5 minutes away from this suburb." So just the heavens opened up, and I thought this is a sign. So he goes and checks out the truck for me. He says it starts, it runs, it's real. I get on the phone to this guy. I transfer a deposit to hold the truck. I call my brother up and I say, "You got to take a day off tomorrow. We're flying to Melbourne. So tonight we're flying to Melbourne. We're picking up a truck and we're driving it back home tonight. It's all going down." He said, "Well, what can we do? I can't. There's no notice. I got to go to work tomorrow." I said, "It's too late. I've already bought you a ticket. All right. These tickets were stupid last minute flights. Qantas just absolutely took me for a ride, but I was willing to pay it." And we got on the plane at 5 o'clock. Hour flight. Thought we'll be there by 6. The truck's about an hour away, so we'll get there at 7. Cool. We're ready to rock and roll. My brother's in tow with me. You have just a great road trip, something to talk about for years and enjoy in this old Blazer. Will it make it home? No one knows. Get on the flight, think it's going to be an hour flight. We get 40 minutes into the flight and the pilot pretty much says, "Hey guys, look, I'm sorry. There's been storms at Melbourne Airport. There's only one runway. We've got international flights that are coming through." So we sat in the air for another 3 hours. I have no way of texting the guy to say, "Oh, geez, we're going to be a little bit late. I'm having a meltdown." The plane ends up landing at about 9 o'clock. I'm freaking the guy's not going to be awake. So, we're going back and forth. The taxi ride, it's an hour ride into the middle of the nowhere. The taxi driver, when we were driving down these roads with no street lights, I think he was equally worried that he was going to end up getting robbed or something silly. So, we're both sitting here. It's a real tense drive. I'm texting the guy. Rock up, see the truck behind the fence, just the silhouette of it, about, something ridiculous, 10:30 at night. The dude's half awake. I go to pay him the rest of the cash and the bank doesn't immediately transfer the money through. So we're sitting there at almost midnight now trying to work out whether the money's going to clear in time before he goes away. And it turned from this, awesome trip I envisioned to essentially just a nightmare. The guy ended up being absolutely awesome, saying, it's cool to leave with the truck, which, yeah, hats off to him. And we begin our journey back from Melbourne to Sydney on a permit, which states that you're not allowed to drive it at night and the truck's got no plates. Do not drive it on toll roads. There is a photo somewhere of a Chevy Blazer with no license plates at 1 o'clock in the morning on a wall saying, "Do you know this guy in Melbourne?" Because there's probably still some outstanding tolls. So, absolute killer trip, man. Really, really good. The guy had it for about 10 years. It was literally just used to drive around a plum farm. So, you could probably pick plums with the roof off. But yeah, when I got back home and started going through some of the paperwork is when I started finding a lot of the history on the trucks. So hopefully what do you reckon, Ronnie, on the edge of your seat with the adventure of the Blazer so far, man?
Yeah, the plum crazy blazer. I just think what's so cool about this is I don't know that you would change it if you could, right? So you think back and you've envisioned this journey and this trip, and your brother's in tow, and you're on the plane, and life is just full of bliss, right? But then when you get in the blazer and you get going and you're headed home, and you're, somewhat illegal, or no, you're illegal, um, it just adds to the whole journey, right? And sometimes you have to have zero expectations based upon, you never know what the hell's going to happen. And so it really adds to the allure and just who and what your blazer is based upon that journey.
Exactly, exactly. And I think with the long trip as well, you get in any new car and there's never that, will we make it back home, or, anything like that. It didn't miss a beat the whole way home, but it burnt in my mind. And it's something that I know my brother and I will be laughing about for the rest of our lives, is the heater was stuck on. So, the switches were a bit sticky, and driving home, it's, 50 degrees or 40 degrees Fahrenheit at night. So it's getting pretty cold. It's not very warm. And my brother would be falling asleep in the passenger seat. The seats aren't the most comfortable for long journeys on these things. They're good, but you can't recline, and you can't get really comfortable, even though there's a heap of room. Either way, my brother's waking up every 20 minutes because he's had to wind the window down because it's too hot. Then he winds it back up because it's too cold. So he's sitting there waking up constantly going, the bloody heater, and ends up kind of just laying in the back of it, sleep. I'm sitting there stopping at every gas station, getting a Red Bull and, some 5 hour energy or something, almost have the toothpicks on my eyes to keep myself awake because it's a boring drive. But it was an absolute experience, exactly like you said. And I think it really just adds to it. So really, really, really fun. And I never forget that. So I know there's probably so many people that have cool stories. Every time you see trucks posted, they're never close to you. So adding to that, instead of just putting it on the back of a tray and watching it arrive, go take that trip. Like, do it. Find someone, find a brother, find a friend, anyone, and just get in there. And regardless of what happens, it's just such an extra experience with whatever you end up with.
Well, and for the audience, if you're taking, you got that girl, she's checking you out across the bar, and you're like, this is a slam dunk. It's just not as fun as the girl who's probably going to say no, and you're like, screw it, what do I got to lose, right? Your heart's pumping a little bit more, and you're thinking, I don't have a shot here, but what do I got to lose? And then next thing you know, you go up and talk to her, and you're like, oh, all right, so this worked out. Well, if you know you're going to make it, it's not as fun as thinking you might not make it, right? I just had Derek from Vice Grip Garage on, and half of what he does, he's not going to make. And that's why we tune in, and is to see, well, is he going to make it? And I guess humans, we're just kind of sick. You're like, oh, I kind of hope he doesn't make it because I want to see what he's going to do when he doesn't make it. And you and your brother, obviously you made it. I don't have a conversion of kilometers an hour and however, but how long does it take to go from Melbourne to Sydney?
Yeah, so it's about an 8 9 hour drive in total, factoring in that the speed's about 70 miles an hour on our interstates. the Blazer being shaped, square bodies definitely aren't known for their great aerodynamics at the best of times. So we're probably doing a bit under that, but it did not skip a beat. So yeah, truly fantastic journey, and exactly like you mentioned, I think it's half the fun with any of these experiences that people have is you don't know until you take it, and they stick with you for the rest of your life. I know we'll definitely be laughing about it. So post making the trip home, there's a heap of paperwork with the truck that we got, which was really cool to see, because it definitely had a story. So I think, jumping into that is that this truck, so the Blazer was actually bought in 1976. So 2 years, it's still pretty fresh. I've got an import slip from 76. It was originally a San Fran truck. So started its life in the Bay Area. And it was imported by a gentleman named Chuck Chapman. And the special thing here is Chuck Chapman was originally from the US. He started his life at Buick, and he became the managing director of GM Holden in 76 to I think 87. So whether or not there was anything special there in terms of history that he wanted a Chevrolet truck, not 100% sure. I'd love to find out. However, in 79, the Holden did start releasing a small quantity of right-hand drive Silverados, optioned with a 350 turbo 400 air conditioning. Whether or not this K5 was his personal truck or something that they wanted to convert and work out how everything was going to work, we your imagination could run wild with what happened. But pre the internet, pre fax, pre having a truck travel 7,000 miles across the Pacific in the 70s, even all the other ones that made the trip as well, it is mind boggling. You couldn't just go on the internet or bring a trailer or anything like that and go check this truck out. Like, it's even more of a myth back then. So it spent a lot of the 70s and 80s in Holden, so there's not a heap of paperwork there, but it was originally, yeah, with GM. It had a bit of a grey history from the 80s to the 90s. It was bought from the 90s to the 2000s. It kind of sat in Melbourne still, not doing a lot, and then was sold through deceased estate auction where the farmer originally picked it up, and it was the plum crazy Blazer. So yeah, I'd love to, what do you reckon about this thing? Yeah, 70s. Yeah, it was the conversion on it astounding in terms of what they did. Like, just the hours they would have spent, obviously, still getting the wood grain to all match up on the dash. There wasn't a lot of quality control back then. So they really, I think, set this as the benchmark in terms of this is how we want them to look. And whether or not they applied that to the latest squares, I'd love to know. And I wish things were documented a bit easier and easy to find, but here we are, and it adds to the mysteriousness, I guess, of this truck.
And for the audience, so some of you might not know, but Holden was a GM based company that made cars in Australia. So obviously, if Chuck was from the States, he went over there, he got a promotion, he wanted to, see the other side of the world. He was, GM working with GM. So from Buick to GM from a Holden perspective. So I gotta think. I mean, so when you look through the paperwork, how did you even figure out to that point? Was it pretty evident that a guy named Chuck Chapman from the States? w- what kind of paperwork did you see? And then I guess, have you been able to do much other research on it from that time?
Yeah. So we're really limited with the documentation in terms of to verify, obviously, exactly what happened. I've contacted Holden a couple of times trying to dig up if they kept anything in terms of what actually was happening with the truck. However, so the registration slips that I still have, that's registered as under like a business entity. So there's a couple of different options with registration over here. It was registered under GM Holden as their truck up until the mid 80s. The craziest thing about it with that as well is it wasn't stamped as a GM Holden when the original import slips to verify, obviously, hey, it was with Holden in the 70s and 80s, but the import slip had to come to an actual person. It couldn't just be, an entity in terms of, hey, this is what Holden's doing. Chuck Chapman doing the research, and you can actually pull some archives of him. He was the head honcho, the big fella at Holden. So yeah, exactly like you said, Holden was a division GMH. They were primarily Bedford, Isuzu, and Chevrolet. A lot of the Chevrolets that did come over through Holden, so they were never really bought in mass. Very, very lightly optioned, no air conditioning, no power steering, no tub. A lot of them were just a flatbed with wooden, slat sides, and they all came with a 292.6. So we didn't get to enjoy the 350s or the 400s or the 454s until about 79, when Holden said, hey, look, we're going to bring the Silverados over, and they're actually going to be bought through and stamped as a GM Holden locally. So
Well, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, right? I mean, it's a 98% exactly what you think happened based upon the pictures that I've seen. And you look at how well that Blazer has been converted. So obviously he's thinking, I want a Blazer over here. He gets it over here. They start, breaking it down and doing the conversion there. It might have just sat for a while after that, depending on your odometer and what it said and so on and so forth. But you got to think what you're thinking is exactly what happened. If it's a GM Holden that Chuck Chapman brings over, the guys convert it. They say this is how we're going to convert these things. They start bringing them all over, especially if it was kind of owned by Holden in the late 70s, 80s, that whole time. What kind of miles were on it? And I don't know if you mentioned it, but was there, before the plum guy got a hold of it, there was one other person that had it
yeah,
between, so it went from GM to one other person, then it went to the plum guy.
yeah, exactly. So everything we have, it had 65,000 mile on it when I purchased it. Really interesting in the way they did it. The tack just had essentially a metal plate over it to convert it to kilometers. So the mileage, it was no longer miles, it was now kilometers per hour, just plated over.
Somebody took a
But
piece of metal and a little marker and made it kilometers.
yeah, and it was
Yeah,
it was
that's
always
awesome.
it was always just a guess. You can never go too quick. But um, yeah, from the plum guy, him buying it at a deceased estate auction, that time in between the 80s to the mid 2000s essentially was, with it, I couldn't find any verifying it, but I'd say it was probably still within someone at Holden. I'm definitely hoping so. I've tried obviously searching through archives to see if it was anyone, but there was no bill of sale or anything that I could find before and after, obviously, Holden, that it did actually go to someone completely external. So I really hope, obviously, there was still someone that was there. There was all the documentation in terms of registration, but Australia, yeah, pre obviously the computers and everything, it wasn't too heavily in terms of it's like trying to decode any of the 70s VINs and 60s VINs there. You can kind of get where the plant was. It was Flint, Michigan. Everything else is kind of CKY, and then it's all a bit. There's not too much you can decode. Yeah, the mind could run wild in terms of just the history of the truck. And like I said, if it could talk, I would sit there and listen to the story. It would have to say any day, like all of us would, just thinking it was around in the 70s and what it was doing. And you could just go forever.
Well, and I think you get to do that on your own because it came across, you could tell where it was built. Was shipped out of, whether it was Long Beach, like you said, he's up in San Fran. So maybe it was up there and it shipped out of there. And it's got this journey, like you said, in the 70s and 76. That's just unremarkable, right? Just one of those things where you're like, this thing is cruising on over And then I just feel like it was meant to be the way that you ended up with it, because who's going to be more passionate about a Catalina blue, white, two-tone 74, from Jaws being kind of part of that to your brother? I just feel like that's where it's like truck poetic justice. Like the truck gods said, you know what, we want to make sure that Oscar gets exactly. So these other guys that are interested, cool. We don't know, we won't know because you got it. But at the end of the day, that to me is just it's meant to be. Nobody else deserves and should be having that truck. And that Blazer, it also should know how lucky it is that it's not in the plum field or, out in the bush doing off-road, excursions, chasing down whatever, right? This thing's living a pampered life. It's somewhat famous, and yeah, it's meant to be for both of you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and that's yeah, it's 100% it. It's I definitely I think with it as well. The reason it's always going to be 50-50, but so much of the enjoyment of having the Blazer and being on the journey of obviously modifying it. I think everyone growing up as well. I definitely even having the chance to wrench on your own truck and doing that is so rewarding. I'm not the most mechanically minded person by any means, but I put the lift kit in on the side of the street where I'd have to roll it in to move it out of the way for bin day, or putting the LS in it. Like, it was something that it definitely on my own journey. I do still have the 350. It's still matching numbers to the VIN. That's left aside for a rainy day. I couldn't obviously part with that, but the Chev community and the old truck community, it is just such a rewarding thing, obviously, having the chance to document the journey I've had with it, and also check out all the other builds for inspiration that are on Instagram, that are on Facebook, and even that are on the old forums. They're just the stuff you can pull. I'm definitely a long time lurker of the forums, because you can find out, your color combination, what works with it, what people have done. It's so refreshing, man. And I think so many people will, it's just testament to the people that own all these trucks that it's the coolest community, man. There's never anyone that is sitting there laughing at what people do. There's all kinds of different builds where you can spend days drawing inspiration on kind of taking little bits and pieces and going, this is what I want to do and this is what I like. And people just they love being part of that journey, which is it's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. We're lucky, we're lucky to have the people that we have, and then really just that, you know, we kind of, John, Oro and I kind of, it's C10 Club worldwide, to think that there's people all over the world like yourselves, because, we're lucky that there's people that have found these trucks and this. And again, it's not just the truck. That's what is so important to understand. It's the people that are in the community. It's the people that are generating posts and stories and giving that relationship. And then again, the smile that you get on your face, and then the smile of the kid that sees you at the grocery store, that someday is going to be like, I want that truck, or I want a cool truck. And the legend lives on, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's it. It hits home for sure. The face and the smile of someone that's walking with their mum, and they sit there yanking on their mum's arm, going "monster truck" or "what is that" or "how cool's that." Like, if you can keep the flame alive and pass that down through generations, it's this is why I think we're at where we're at today, because you hear stories of all these trucks, first gens, and everything they're fetching huge dollars at the auctions. And I know people say, oh well, geez, bring a trailer and Hemmings and a lot of that, they're just kind of inflating the numbers. But the reasoning behind that is, I think, everything the community is constantly doing, like, and it's thanks to a lot of the AMDs and the engineered vintage, and even doja mats and everything that everyone's doing to obviously keep that flame burning. It wouldn't be possible, because these were all $5,000 or $500 trucks at one point. Look at them now. It's incredible.
You're a little younger. I grew up in the age of what was called the stomper. And I don't know if you're familiar with stompers, but you have a real life stomper. So, what what made you, or what was your thought process to go from, like, I think you might have had like 33s on, I know you had 15s on that thing when it was, you know, and then you're like, dude, we are going big. So you went big. And what was your thought on that? Did you see something in Cali? Did you see something in a magazine? And did you struggle with figuring out how big do I go?
It's just like chasing that number on a piece of paper where you say, I've got more power. But I was so just any of the old magazines or anything from even the Instagram, vintage square body pics and the old trucks. I was so inspired by that generation of build in terms of big tires, yeah, still 15s, but just big lift. And it's the golden era in my mind because we just don't have it over in Australia. Like it was really hard. I did start on it was factory, and I know some people were like, "You bonehead, you ruined it!" Like it was perfect. But two things in my mind were I'm going to drive the wheels off it, and enjoy the heck out of it, and I'm just going to do what I really always wanted to do, which was just create a big 70s, 80s kind of inspired truck. There's nothing cooler than seeing some of the old magazines and going like it's kind of reliving that childhood memory. Like everyone, monster trucks and even like a lot of the C trucks that are slammed. Like there's such an appeal to it, and yeah, definitely there's people that go the purists and all of that. I have a lot of respect for, and I see lots of super clean blazers where I go, man, the stock look is fantastic, but I'm living the little Oscar in me goes, send it to the sky and have some fun. So we're on a 12-inch lift right now. It drives pretty well. Obviously, a lot of people say it's like riding a bull, and probably flexes like an ironing board, but it puts a massive smile on my face. And there's everyone that said you couldn't do it because Australia is really stringent with their rules and regulations. Like it's definitely still not legal in the police's eyes, sadly. I don't unless you've got a really good reason. Just because you say I can't do it, I'm gonna do it. Like I want to find out for myself. So it's been half the journey. It's been such a blast. So really fun.
Did you go, and I think you did, but you went from when you got it, what size tires were on it when you got it?
There were originally 35, so they weren't tiny tires, but there were heaps of issues with scrubbing. So, plum truck, he put 35-inch muddies on it, so obviously it didn't get bogged in the field. We had spare 31s with the rally rims as well. They came with it too, but it's really hard, obviously, sourcing any decent rims and tires over here. So, thanks to the likes of Summit. I got some Bart racing wheels, 15 by 14 with as much negative offset as you could essentially get. Put them on with some 38s. 38s are pretty much the largest tire size you can source. Interco is unheard of in Australia, and shipping 39.5-inch Interco tire or a bogger, they're about $1,000 a piece in shipping. So like I said, I'd probably sell one kidney, but I'd like two still. It's just kind of making the best of what we have over here while drawing inspo from that, the old kind of golden era of your old, Chevy trucks. So
Yeah, I love your vision too. And just like you said, you see those magazines. I love looking at those old magazines. I was a kid in that era, and that era is coming back for sure. So we don't see that anymore. You do see some survivor trucks like that. There was one at the Get Down like 3 years ago. That was a step side, and it's coming back, right? You're seeing you're seeing guys take real clean trucks and put them, 8s to 12 inches, going 40s, 44s. Yeah, you're definitely see that come back, and that style, that old school, like to me, that's going to be like 1984 to 1988, where Even in high school, I had a guy 91. He had a K5 Blazer that was on 44 Super Swampers, and nobody, everything was a 15, so a 15 14, and then this just huge balloon of a tire and the amount of money. So you've got a unique style I could see, but I also see where you still love all versions where it's like, hey, I like the slammed one, I like the stock one that's running on 32s, but this is mine and I wanted to do this to it. And you can always go back. I mean, it's not like you're hacking the whole thing up. Somebody could take that thing right back to where it was. What was the hardest part on figuring out that lift and getting said parts?
It was really a lot of trial and error with it. I think the hardest thing that was overlooked, and I spent a heap of time trying to perfect, was nothing is made for a lifted right hand drive truck. So when you come into, making sure all your angles are correct, chatting to shops, pretty much saying, hey, can you assist me with this? They'd be like, yeah, we can help you out. And then I say 70s, and then I say Chev, and you'd hear the dial tone like, no, we're not interested anymore. Sorry, buddy. Is that from everyone that kind of said you can't do it or it's too hard. I wanted to prove people wrong and say, well, I can, and this is what I want to do. But there were really a lot of issues, obviously, getting that right hand drive or the steering geometry to make it completely drivable. So with help from a lot of people stateside, and a lot of mucking around, a massive one, ORD, so your off-road design. We've got hundreds of emails sitting there going back and forth, and they fabbed up a lot of the steering components to make the lift work. So it wouldn't be possible exactly without the help of the community and people, obviously stateside and even local, just saying, hey, if you're going to do this, let's try and brainstorm how we can make this work. And it made it all possible.
Well, I love that, and I didn't know that were worked with ORD, and hopefully you were working with Steven. But at the end of the day, it's cool to hear you say, "Hey, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do this right." And ORD is going to be that right. They're going to be the ones that have spent so much time. And it's funny because it's a small company, but it's a big company. It's a company that's been through it all and knows what to do with the square body, how to lift it, how to make it ride right, and that's probably why you are happy with what you have and it's not bouncing you throughout the whole world and dealing with all that. Especially because when you take a full convertible full top for the audience 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, you lift it that much. I mean, you're gonna have flex. You're gonna have flex anything, right? 5, 6 inches. You're gonna start to get some flex. So I'm imagining that you definitely there's times where you're probably like, "Holy crap." And I don't know at what capacity you're tweaking it, off-roading it, hell, you could take it off a curb and you can get some flex and those rocker boxes are going to fill it. But it's super cool that you've done it and you've done it really right.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ronnie. And it's everything with it, man. It's just an absolute culmination of drive and inspiration from previous generations in terms of how they built their trucks. And I think with it is it's really hard. Is don't always listen to the naysayers or people that say you're going to ruin your truck. Like, build it for yourself. And it happens all the time. And it's just having a respect and trying to, stand in everyone's shoes and go, I can respect what someone's done with their build, in terms of, even if you want to put big mud tires and, 20s or 21s or 22s on it, like, I actually dig that style as well. There's nothing perfect, and it's finding what works for you, and screw everyone else that says you can't do it. And that's why I think so many of these trucks that are coming out of the woodwork right now are those people that are saying, I'm building this for me. And everyone goes, wow, this is awesome, because of how good the community is. It's just, man, I'm loving to see it. There's so many things that are making a comeback. And yeah, it's all thanks to everyone else, I think, that's keeping the passion alive. So we're going to keep on passing it down generation to generation, brother. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's very awesome. I love what you've done with it. Have you taken the time, I assume you have, and whether you did it on purpose or accidentally, but to really get in there and look at like your dash pad, to look at some of the things that how they've done it? And I could see Plum Crazy Guy, he don't give two shits, right? But you being such a fanatic and being, somewhat obsessed with this thing, have you gotten underneath there and really, looked at that ingenuity? And was that on purpose, or was that because, hey, I'm modifying this thing and oh shit, look at what they did there. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that type deal.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a fine line of probably, oh, shit, what have they done here with some of it? But really, really amazed in terms of obviously the time they've spent to do this. There was not a lot of quality control. You can definitely go to the other side of the spectrum where I've seen square bodies that have been right-hand drive converted that don't even have a square body looking dash. They've just kind of mashed a completely different model dash in it and gone, well, it fits. We'll put some, aftermarket gauges in it, and whatever, it works. Good luck. But yeah, they've used a lot of the factory components in terms of remaking that dash. So there's definitely some fiberglass, but there's still the metal shell that they've used for the vast majority of it to obviously make it work. And yeah, every time I look under it, obviously there's always little bits and pieces that I notice that may be new where I've gone, geez, I didn't even realize they've gone to the extent of, obviously bracing this so it doesn't rattle, or making sure for all the HVAC system to work that, these lines are obviously all correct. So yeah, I think every time more than not, I look under it and I go, geez, like the hours they would have spent doing this is I'm sure Chuck, being an engineer, rewinding that time and spending the time at Buick, he's probably there going, we have to do this way, and we can't do it this, and this is what we need, and it shows for sure.
How about the AC? So you think about on a left-hand drive, the AC comes in, it goes through the fender, it's got its fresh air. Did they convert all that as well?
All converted,
Oh my
everything was
God, that's
put
unreal.
across. Man, summertime, windows up, AC blasting. It was, yeah, I couldn't believe it. So I just, yeah, hats off to them, man, big time.
Such a bonus, because even if it wasn't done, you wouldn't care when you bought it. It's one of those deals where you were so just enamored with this thing that you would have been happy and tickled with whatever it would have been. But to hit such a home run, to have it all done and then possibly done by GM, you had no clue and it just worked out.
100%. And everyone sat in a truck before in 100-degree heat going, oh, what am I doing? You look next to you and, someone's got their windows up and you're kind of like, geez, I wish I was that guy right now. But, thanks to vent windows, top off if you're feeling, like getting a bit of a tan, best of both worlds. It's something that I never thought it would, play out like this. And it's been the absolute best time, man. Seriously, seriously good. So, with the recent trip as well, having the opportunity to go to Dino's and see a lot of the SEMA stuff as well. It's so cool, man. You can draw so much inspiration from everything. So it keeps that flame burning.
It's kind of cool that it's a 74, because in 73 they put the SPID build sheet on the front inner fender. So your driver's side, or I guess in America, the left side inner fender. So like with Yellowstone, you got to save it. They switched it up with the, 70s, they put everything in the glove box. 73 they put them on that front fender. Was there a build sheet in the glove box? Is there a SPID build sheet in there?
We've got a SPID build sheet still in the glove box. So that's how we could confirm the 350 still factory number, with all the cool stamping on it on the back of the block, obviously, with the clock in terms of when the casting was done. It was heavily, heavily optioned. So, we've got comfort tilt, we've got all condition, the air conditioning, gas tank plates, the 31-gallon tank. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think still the Catalina blue, frost white. Like I know there was such a vast arrangement of colors you could have chosen from. So all the factory, the tinting as well. It's yeah, I remember looking at it because those SPID, the SPID sheets they can come quite thin in terms of options, and other people, I think, when they're on the dealer floor, just went put everything on. Let's do it.
Well, and if Chuck ordered this thing, he did it up right. So it might have been one of those things where maybe it didn't sell and he picked it up, or but who cares at this point? It had all those options and you got it. Is that one of the things where, for us, we're so spoiled. We don't even have to take a second to think about it. It's like, hey, I can get vintage air. If I want to get vintage air, I can get vintage air. Is that something where because they started importing more and more, like you said, I think you said 79, 80, is that something where do you try to stockpile some of those AC components because they are a converted component? Whereas if you have a problem, it's near impossible to get any parts and or AC parts, especially because you can enjoy that.
Yeah, it's definitely, there'll be occasionally where you do find specific right-hand drive parts for the squares pop up, and anytime they do, I constantly got the missus going, "We can't put any more in the garage. Come on, geez, how many more spare parts do you need?" But it's like how long's a piece of string? It's definitely something where it's hard building trucks over here. It takes like anything, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. It's even like the builds over there, man. It's you got to be dedicated and hungry to see it through. But I think one thing that's really cool with it is there's definitely a lot of people that message me stateside that are interested in right hand dashes and other components for the squares that they pop up. And if anyone ever has a hunger to convert even one of the first gens or a square, there are parts out here where you could convert your truck to right hand. So join the club if you if you're ready for it.
Yeah, the irony of that is, if you guys were to have people want parts from there shipped here, that would be, yeah, that would be hilarious. People would get a little taste of it. I know even the folks up in Canada deal with some of that, where again, we're just so spoiled. And to me, it's just that extra level where it just proves my thought of your passion. Somebody who's willing to spend and do that. It's again, we take it for granted because we can have one or 10 or whatever it is and don't think anything of it. I mean, they're still driving around today. I guarantee if I go out on the road today, I'll see, especially in Arizona, I'll see, I could see all three generations if I drive around long enough on the road, still running, not even a question. And for you guys to, harvest that, find those parts, and then build such a killer ride. Has there been, when you go to shows and stuff, because it is such a unique build, have you had media coverage from down there? Do you get in print or, win some awards, or do you take it to, Cars and Coffees or whatever it is down there, or do you have bigger shows that you take it to?
Yeah, we do have a really, the Aussie car scene it's fantastic for a lot of the old stuff. There's definitely not many cars and coffee, or there are a few big events, but there's I think some level of intimidation almost when you see like a lot of the old steel bumper cars that we have rolling around here are the old Holdens or the old Fords. And when people do see these, slammed C10s or lifted K series, they kind of go, "Oh, geez, like what is this thing?" It's that you can see the gears clicking almost, and it's with a lot of the media coverage, and I've had some people reach out that want to put it in adverts or have it for weddings and stuff, and always more than happy to accommodate for it. But at the end of the day, I've just built it kind of to enjoy it. I'm not really too fussed what people think and if it isn't their cup of tea, because it's not something you see all the time over here. So you do get those more kind of like, "Wow, this is awesome," or look, it's not really what I do, or anything like that. So yeah, at the end of the day, man, it's just every time getting in it, puts a smile on my face. Someone else goes, this is wicked when you're at the gas station. Or I remember my, dad growing up had a Bronco or, an F truck or something like that. And bringing back memories for other people is really what I do it for. I didn't build it to, park it and hope people like it. It's like, man, it's, as long as it makes me happy, it's, it's all that matters at the end of the day without sounding greedy. So,
Have you been offered any money for it to where somebody else had to have it?
oh, there have been a couple of offers I have had. So there's been an offer, um, a bit north of 100 for it previously. I did honestly think about it because it does sound quite appealing in the bank account, but uh, you know, money doesn't make you happy. Jeez, I think we've all lived off noodles and the dollar menu at McDonald's after buying copious amounts of parts. So that's what makes me happy. It's I didn't build it obviously hoping someone would offer me some obscene amount for it. It's purely just to be on the journey and be a part of it is the biggest thing. So it's been awesome, man, and I'll keep on trucking in it. And if I have to get buried in it, I'll get buried in it. So it's the way it's going.
Well, you're on the journey, and that's why you're sitting where you are now, and that's why we're glad to have you on, to talk about that journey. What about the missus? You said, what does she think?
Every time I am on Rock Auto or a parts page, kind of saying, "What do you reckon about this?" I definitely get the eye like, "Oh, you're not doing more stuff to it, are you?" But incredibly supportive. So she loved it when you could get in it a bit easier. I bring the little stool around so you can hop in it with the lift on it at the moment, but yeah, the missus has been so, a massive shout out to Sarah, just for being super supportive of it the whole time. I think, having family that's in your corner saying, there were definitely parts when building it where we hit some walls, obviously, where things are really hard to come across and no one wanted to touch, from an auto electric standpoint or anything like that. There's no one doing the ring around that said, "Hey, I'm happy to dedicate the time to help with this." It's super. It just makes it all the more worth it. Obviously, seeing the end of it, being able to enjoy it with family and loved ones, where you can go, "Let's go out on a sunny day." I've had the dogs in the back before. I've got two big Great Danes, so they kind of match the big truck vibe of it as well. But yeah, all these builds wouldn't be possible, I think, with friends and family behind us saying, get it done. There's definitely times where,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
people.
think whether or not they love it, if they truly love you and they see how it makes you, then that's the truth. I know a guy who I know a few, but yeah, they've gotten divorced over trucks. And it's like, listen, if they're not supportive to what you love, then do they really even love you? It's kind of hard to say it that way. But if I saw my kid or my spouse lose their mind over something, that's the best, right? You're like, okay, that doesn't do it for me, but I love you, and of course I want you to be that happy. So let's do it. I'll try it. Let's whatever it is. I don't care, So
Yeah.
that kind of really adds to it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's always yeah, it's me or the truck, and I think all that here is the fan belt or me trying to start it a couple of times. I'm out the driveway, I'm gone. So
Yeah.
what decision you're gonna make? But yeah, it's been awesome, man. So yeah, I just like I said, it's been such a journey. Obviously, having the chance, and I think it's not going to be the last Chev I have. I think 2024. I know I've had the opportunity to meet Jake, who's up in the Pacific Northwest, along with Ben from Engineered Vintage at Dino's. And will there be more Chevs? The crystal ball, I think, saying there probably will be more that come into my life. So thanks to meeting people like even yourself as well, Ronnie, it just you just want to keep on adding and fueling the flames. And I think everyone could probably end with one of each truck in their driveway or in their front yard. It's that fine line we walk of where do we stop, man? Where do we stop?
Yeah, that's where you might not get quite the support once you get a little too crazy. I know my wife currently out her kitchen window is looking at a Blazer and she's not that happy about it because that's just where it happens to be parked. But um, well, and you also have the G20, right? So you have the van as well.
I don't have the van. I've got a very close friend of mine has the G20, which was another. He's had incredible cars all his life. He's personally bought back El Caminos and C10s from the states that he went with his dad, just pretty much picking up cars from the US. I literally have met people that obviously are of that same mindset thanks to driving the truck around, and you just your network of friends you make obviously along this journey locally and internationally is mind-blowing. But yeah, I met him by accident at a gas station filling up once. He pulled up in an Escalade that he was towing an old Ford Falcon with, and he just, the Escalade looked tiny parked next to the Blazer, and we got talking. And yeah, he's got an incredible collection, and the G20 is obviously one of them as well. And yeah, didn't expect the video to blow up of the G20 towing the Blazer, but yeah, it was an incredible combo, and I think it brought back memories for a lot of people, even the van era of those conversion vans as well. Like that is probably one of the comfiest things I've ever been in, man. Swivel chairs, bed in the back. It's yeah, super super cool, and an appreciation for, I think, just everything Chevy built. It was just that 60s, even earlier, but 80s, where they would just go and get an idea in their head and let's make it work. It's just so cool, isn't it?
Well, and I think that's what happens, right? So you get bit hard. You've been completely, bit and you think, okay, now I've met, Jake and Ben and all these other guys, and you get on social and you start seeing it. Well, then, Chief Brody is like, okay, it's done. I've checked all these boxes. Well, now I want another adventure, right? And that's that spice of it keeps going. Can I afford to keep the big Blazer? Do I sell it because somebody else wants it? And do I buy another project and keep it going and keep it going? And that's where you'll see a lot of people now with social media. I know some people, I think they like building them way more than they like driving them. They just love building them, and you have to kind of figure out what is your journey. Do I like to just wrench and hell, sometimes you look at these chassis these guys build and you're like, don't cover it. Look at that thing. It's just a piece of, I mean, it's an absolute piece of art. When I go over to Jason Berlin, which is AZ High Test, and you were at the get down and you look at that, you're like, dude, that's a sin to cover that thing. It's just so absolutely stunning and gorgeous. So I think, that might be what eventually says, all right, I got to sell this thing because I want to import something else. I want to import this. I want to say at one point I thought you might even have been looking for a first gen Blazer.
I was, and coming back to that, there's, I think everyone kind of has the moment where they sit up staring at the roof at night, going, "Oh, these are pretty cool. Could I make something possible?" But there's such a special place. The first gen Blazers just, Chev obviously competing with the Broncos and Jeep and International and creating this just incredible, like they're just such a piece of art. Like a massive fan of the early Broncos, but almost too small when you park them next to some of the first gen Blazers and stuff. It's just kind of night and day difference, I guess. And seeing a few in person as well, would absolutely love to add a first gen to the stable. They're unheard of over here. There's an incredibly clean 69 that floats about that's still got wax markings on the firewall that I'd probably have a heart attack in terms of hearing, if they were ever to part with it, how much they'd probably want for it. But yeah, tracking the market over there, it's almost, like missing the boat slightly, I think, with the conversion rate and everything that they're, yeah, I don't have enough internal organs to pay for a first gen anymore. Sadly, I think next on the radar, because they're, every time I see them, and even the most recent trip I kind of came back, you know particularly after seeing Bankrupt and so many of the crew cabs are over there. Crew cab squares, just they have my heart right now. So I know I didn't want to say it, but I was seeing it. Almost have to cover it because it's just I keep on looking at it. But yeah, the crew cab squares are just I think another thing that they're a work truck. They were I think they kind of all just vanished, and now right now they're just popping up left, right, and center in terms of all these awesome builds, lowered, lifted. I'd settle for anything. But if anyone's got a crew cab hiding about somewhere, slide into my DMs. So super, super, super cool.
Would you want it to be 4 by?
I I don't think it'd be a deal breaker. I've so many of the crew cabs that I saw at Dino's, SEMA, I equally liked them lowered. Like I think they're super cool lifted. But would it be a deal breaker at the end of the day? Heck no. It would
Yeah.
just the appeal of double bench seat, super long bed that you could put anything in. Probably the chance to tow the Blazer. Oh, mate, it'd be,
Oh, so you're not selling the Blazer. I get it. Okay, now you're
yeah,
doubling now you're doubling it up. Now you've got every kid's little dream. So you've got the dually crew cab pulling the Blazer, and that's every little Hot Wheel set up there. I was actually over at Switch earlier today, and they had a pretty sweet little Matchbox set up right there, and it was the same thing. And it was a square dually with a camper shell, just a shell with a Blazer matching. I'm trying to think if it was I think it was Fanta soda or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was sitting there, and I was like, oh, that's what it's all about, for sure. The problem with the dually, and the only reason I say this is I know Vulcan Umberto, he had a Dodge dually, and the dualies I think are almost impossible to get in the container. So you've got to like pull the dually fenders, I think, to make that happen. So yeah, that's the whole other challenge, is to get a dually over there. Do you see any dualies that are actually over there running around Sydney?
yeah, they're over here. The rules are incredibly hard to get them over here because you almost have to register them as a heavy vehicle over here because they can tow so much. The roads and maritime services here essentially says it's classified as a truck almost. So there's some really crazy rules and regulations that I've looked into, and it scares people, I think, even more. You do see them over here. They're quite rare because a lot of them were over here just purely for towing horse floats or towing your big containers around, and they've, I think, kind of all seen their time. And every time I hear someone from a Dually, they say, and for, I think, anyone that's manufacturing parts out there right now, the hot stock in Australia is, do you have a crew cab roof skin? Where can I get a crew cab roof skin? Mine's convertible because it's sat under a tree for 20 years, and stuff's dropped on it, and it's just I've got this fist-sized rust hole right over where I'm driving. So yeah, when you do see them over here, they've yeah, definitely bit hard to come across. But yeah, shipping them over I think is equally as hard. They dually becomes singly to dually again when they're over here. And I think anyone, when you're bringing them in, any of the importers as well, when you obviously tell them what you're going to bring in, they almost fall off their chair going, there's no way. That's two car spots on a 40-foot container. So double or nothing.
Yeah, I guess you're probably better off just finding something over there, and then, maybe somebody who's got a hole in their rooftop there, and then you metal work the rest of it, because at the end of the day, the amount of juice you're gonna, to spend to get it over there, it's probably, a kid can dream, right? That's it. And you obviously made it work once, so you could probably do it again. You just got to find that right place, right time, and if there's a few over there, and really, if you could find a crew cab, you could do everything else by piecemealing something else together. Again, I don't know how hard it is to find it, just even a long bed, but when you're here in the States, is it just, do you feel like, again, because we take it so far for granted, like you're saying, like maybe a C30 is considered more of a big hauling truck, and especially in Arizona, we have these humongous trucks, just in Texas obviously as well. They're just running around all over the road. Is that foreign? Is everybody, when you're here, are you just like, holy crap, like everybody's driving these big old trucks around?
Yeah, it's incredible. It is it's you just don't see it in Australia.
That's
Like
hilarious.
it's going over and seeing, a Julie towing essentially like a truck float. Like you do not see that over here. You might see a twin axle trailer or something with a car on it, and it's never like the Rams and the Silverados are definitely now the ones that are starting to pull them. But I think half the fun of coming to the US every single time is obviously meeting all the great people you meet off social media in person. But the rest is just going, I wish we could do that back home. Like we can't do it. Like, the police are super strict on what you do. And yeah, we could probably we'd have a heap of fun, but yeah, we're not allowed. So yeah, it's just it's half the fun of coming over every single time, just going, oh, this is you're in heaven, it's everything you wish you could do.
Yeah, it's unreal. I can't even imagine like SEMA when you walk in the front there and all those brodozers are like you're practically walking under them. They make your blazer look small. They're absolutely just it's over the top. You know, walking over the bridge and walking into Central Hall, you're just like from south, it's just ridiculous. You're like, holy shit, look at how big, these trucks are and these is SUVs and yeah, they're I don't even know what size, 26-inch wheels on just a humongous tires. So yeah, I bet it's kind of unreal.
Oh, the stories of yeah, definitely got some photos of yeah, my brother and I standing under a lot of the trucks that were in there, just in tears in terms of just it's so cool to see. Like and there's like I said, just every build you got to have, put yourself in their shoes, and a lot of respect for obviously the time and the effort they've put into the builds, and seeing something with four-wheel steer and all these chrome body pieces underneath it, just going, oh my goodness, like this is it's next level. And yeah, it'd be like parking a matchbox car next to, like, the blazer would be like a little matchbox car next to them. And it's incredible. So it's so cool to see, obviously, all the different generations of builds and stuff like that, man. Is yeah, it's nothing you see over here. So the blazer, driving that essentially around the streets of Australia, is the equivalent of driving something that you see at SEMA, around the streets. Is you're towering over traffic for miles and miles and miles, and you see people in the rear view kind of look at it in the rear view, and they can only see the bottom of the chrome bumper, and then they're hanging out the window going, what is this thing? Oh my goodness. It's next level.
Do you ever get busted for so the big thing in Arizona and I assume the states, but is anytime you have like 35s, you can get away with it. 37s, you're gonna be in trouble. I'm putting 37s on the truck that I'm doing right now, is if you don't have mud flaps. They really will get you on that. And it sounds like you're already illegal, like if they really wanted to be, a pain in the ass on it. Do they get you on mud flaps? Do they get what are they looking for when they get you or try to get you? Or what are you stressed about when you're sitting there driving around looking for the cops and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's always, you got to make sure you say a little prayer before you go, and pray to the truck gods that you're not going to get defected or anything along those lines. But it is quite similar in terms of, yeah, no mud flaps. Wheel poke is a really big issue. So I think people constantly look, and they always say, how the heck do you get away driving with wheels that stick out of the guards like that? I'd chalk it up to luck. And I think just I drive the wheels off the truck. I'm not afraid of driving it, but there's, I think, a mutual appreciation even from the local law enforcement that they kind of drive past it. By the time they register, what the heck was that thing driving? I'm, off in the sunset, a couple miles down the road. But anything bigger than 2 inches of lift, you're in trouble. So from
Wow.
factory, and about an inch of tire. So that's pretty much the rule of thumb. But because I think, like I said, they spend a bit of time going, did that thing really just drive past me? Or am I, I think I'm a bit over on the shift and I should go get some Z's. I think count my blessings there for sure.
Dude, you just went so far over the line that they're like, they're like respect for this guy. They're like,
Yeah.
he didn't just say 2 inches, he went 12 inches, and he's so far over the line that they got mad respect. That's awesome. Do you feel like it's better that you're in Sydney versus like a smaller town, that because you're in the bigger metropolis type area that you can maybe get away with more because those cops are like, we're not going to waste our time with this?
Yeah, I think just like stateside, so we've got like your council areas, which are like your your counties in terms of each of them has their own police department, their local area command. I'm probably in one that's deemed uh, they don't really like the four-wheel drive scene. They're quite tough on our cars. But I definitely, I think chalk it up to they I guess, yeah, I've kind of just broken the stick in terms of what they say is allowed and not, and gone, this is where I'm putting it now. And the times I have been pulled over, the police are always, they're absolute awesome, and they have a respect in terms of, I think they like to see it on the road. There have been a couple of comments of, man, you can't drive this thing around with the tires out of the guards like that. That's, the thing looks like a bulldozer driving down the road. Like, what's going on? And they kind of look the other way and say, look, just get it fixed up, and hopefully I don't see you around again. But yeah, definitely, I try and get it out, obviously, I just love driving it, but there's a lot of I like doing a bit of charity in it as well, obviously, in terms of, going to events where there might be, stuff donating for the children's hospital, or cancer, or depression fundraisers and stuff as well. So just trying to get it out in terms
You
of
just tell the cops
the
that.
greater
You just
good.
tell the
Yeah.
cops, you're like, I'm on my way to a kids cancer event, and we have Make a Wish in the States. So you're like the new Make a Wish. You're like, I'm Oscar the Wish, and this kid wanted to see this rad Stomper Blazer, and the cops like, all right, Oscar, here you go. They're gonna know you by name, dude. That's freaking awesome, man. What would happen if they said, "Listen, this is decommissioned. You cannot drive it anymore." Would they just want to see proof that you made it back to legal, or would they like say, "You're done. We're impounding this thing"?
So we don't definitely light on the impounds, which is lucky. They could very well, so with the defect rules that we have locally, there will maybe come a day where someone's having a bad day and goes, "That's it. I've had enough of this dude driving this, bloody big Chevy around." So if the day ever did come, I'd probably just register it in another state. So say I move and put it on different plates, and if anyone ever sees that on Instagram, you know what's happened. So don't laugh too hard, but it is, without we're quite known, obviously, for being heavily policed in terms of, rules and regulations, and they're frowned upon, I think a lot of the lifted trucks. But yeah, you got to be in it to win it, brother. It's just
Yeah, I
one of
love
the
it.
things, Ronnie.
Yeah, one thing you said is so much soul, and I think that hopefully with your passion, they see it, and you take such good care of it, and it's like, listen, you can almost tell the guy, listen, you got to do what you got to do, but I'm just out here enjoying my thing here. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not running over anybody. I'm not hurting anybody. And by the way, I'm on my way to a kids cancer event. Okay, so hopefully you've got that one patented down. Okay, I'm gonna take you out with this. What if you could do, if I sent you, $5,000, $10,000? What's next? What would you do next with the Blazer? What do you feel like you would want to spend the money on?
Well, I'll shoot across my bank details after this, because
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
got
Well,
that
direct deposit.
um, I
If I think I said if I could send you the money.
yeah, yeah. No, that's okay. I
Okay, I
tuned
could give you a
into.
gift certificate for engineered vintage. What would you buy? No, yeah, you probably would want one of them AF grills. Those are pretty sweet. I'm actually gonna. I have a '74 as well, and Ben has told me that I can get a little AF action on there. So that's the plan. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, what are you feeling like Chief Brody needs?
I definitely, probably a bit of chrome love. the Marquee, all the moldings and stuff they're doing at the moment, engineered vintage, Ben, like seeing those grills and picking one up in person, and you almost need free hands to hold it because you're like, man, this thing's got some weight to it. Like I bought one of the GM restoration, the LMC grills, which are a great bit of kit to kind of freshen up that front end. But yeah, Ben would, I'd be knocking on his door getting one of those engineered vintage grills, Marquee moldings, and I think we've already blown the budget by then. So everything else, man, it's yeah, I'm super happy with where it's at, and it's something that there'll always be little tweaks to it as time goes on, but I'm just enjoying the ride right now.
Nice, nice. That's what it's all about. You do a great job. You obviously have the passion, and it's one of those things where it was meant to be. I can imagine if somebody does ever offer you more than you could, turn down, just understand, because to me, I feel like sometimes it's meant to be that I'm supposed to keep it, but it doesn't mean that you're always supposed to keep it. It means that you were supposed to have it when you had it. And if you do move it down the road, you know that you had it when you had it, no different than, like, for me, Yellowstone. Orange Slice is kind of getting to that point. I really don't ever see my life without it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, with your Blazer, it's one of those things where you're like, dude, I kind of want to do these and I kind of want to do this, and yeah, we all want them all, but at the time, that you and the Blazer are just, you had the journey. I mean, you started off that way. Did one thing when you were talking about that? Did it give you any problems when you made that 600-mile journey? Did you have any problems at all?
So apart from a can of drink exploding in the car, which was it hit a weird part of one of the frame, like the little seat rails, and just went everywhere. It was completely like a heater stuck on, which added a bit of, that was a bit of fun to the story. It drove like an absolute dream, and I continued to drive it afterwards until one of the front uni joints started squeaking a bit, and that was, something super minor. But I really, I think, exactly like you said, I couldn't agree more. Is I think everyone has a journey with each truck, and 80% of the fun, like there's a lot of fun driving it and seeing people respecting the build and the time you've spent, but it is fun building these things, man. Bringing them back, putting that in the mind vault in terms of I did that, and maybe there will come a time where I say, yeah, the next step is a crew cab or a first gen. But yeah, for the time being, I think the journey hasn't ended with the Blazer. It may come a time, but just got to keep on enjoying what we got. Like you said, with Orange Slice, man, there's just so much fun, I think, in the build, watching the transformation. And you'll spend a night one day maybe looking through old photos or getting a reminder saying, look at 2020, and you look and you go, oh my God, that's where it was three. Like, oh, no way, and it's that pat on the back where you give yourself and you go, I did that. This was hard work and a lot of support, and just going, I can do this. I don't want to listen to people saying you can't. Let's just make it happen, man. And it becomes addictive almost, isn't it? You almost keep on chasing that, like, let's make this happen, and let's turn something around. Nothing is too far gone, man. It's just about having the time and the dedication to put into it, and testing your own limits in terms of it's a roller coaster.
Well, and ultimately for the audience, you nailed it, is for you guys here in the States, if Oscar can do it and the folks in Australia can do it and they could put up with it, obviously Canada as well, it's a no-brainer. Don't let the missing part, especially in the Chev GM world. I've got some friends that, they've bought FJ40s and they can't find a water pump to save their life. And we are just, again, going back to Vulcan Umberto, who he's got a few Chevys, but he's a Dodge guy and he's always crying and complaining, and it's a little bit tomfoolery, but he's just like, you guys have it so good, you could build a truck out of a catalog. And so yeah, let's not stop, let's keep going and enjoying these things. And you're a motivation. If you don't realize it, you are, because you're over there doing what you're doing. And there was plenty of people who probably don't even realize that they might see your Blazer, they might see a post and think, I don't even know, I didn't know that was in Australia. It's just an absolute beautiful ride. and it's unique and what you've done with it. So know that you are a motivator. Know that somebody who has to spend the kind of money you have to spend and the time and the patience. My God, the patience, because we've been completely ruined by Amazon where we get things in, immediately, even if we're buying parts from whether it's LMC or Brothers or AZ Pro or Switch or whoever I'm buying stuff for the Summit, they come pretty quick here. We're not waiting for months on a time like you guys are over there.
Yeah, 100%. So mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, Ronnie, and I think as well with it, C10 Talk, C10 Nation, the meets you guys are doing is it's bringing such a spark to everyone. I came back from the US with such motivation in terms of, I need to get this thing just finished. There's a couple little bits and pieces where it's hard. You kind of look at your truck and see it every single day and might be a bit hard on yourself in terms of, oh, this isn't as nice as, what it used to be or something like that. And just telling yourself that, yeah, this is, don't be hard. There's so many supportive people, even in Australia. Like a massive shout out to all the C10 Australia guys that are over here. They're, regardless of four wheel, two wheel, they're always there to help out. And there's guys that are hundreds and hundreds of k's away that heaps of miles, many miles, that will they'll come out and spend a weekend wrenching on your car to help you out. And it's just like, what a community, man. So we've got to keep on trucking.
Yeah, hey, the trucks are cool, but the people are cooler. You're part of that group, Oscar. Thank you so much for being on the pod. Thanks for doing what you do, and we can't wait to follow the journey. Ultimately, I hope that you can find out some more information because you think about like the 70s. I assume that Chuck Chapman is probably passed, but there's got to be somebody somewhere there, that little needle in the haystack, if you can find that. But at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. We can assume that Chief Brody was, the litmus test. It was kind of one of those things where they're like, "Hey, this is our model. Let's do it." And that's the story I'm sticking with. That's what I'm going with. Thank you, thanks Sarah, and keep on trucking, dude.
Love it. All right, Ronnie, take it easy, brother. We'll talk soon.
See you, buddy. Later, bro.